You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure, smash that like button. So Friday, when we left you, it was an up and down 24 hours. Of course, Mason Taylor committed on Thursday, and then on Friday, LSU got the really disappointing news that Jacoby Matthews, the five-star safety out of Ponchatoula, decommitted. But we knew on Friday evening that Emery Jones, the four-star offensive lineman out of Catholic High in Baton Rouge, was set to make his announcement, and we thought it was going to be really good news for LSU. As it turns out, it was.
They say that the main objective of being a parent is to protect our kids. When we think of that word, protect, we think of physical presence and action. What we often look past are the instructions, love, and purpose instilled in us by our parents. The true protection we need. When God brings home one of his children, the dynamics change, as does one's purpose. Some things are out of our control, so I control what I can. Some decisions are made for us, while others are in our hands. I was forced to protect my family at an early age, the one at home and the one on the field. I did so under the guidance of my beautiful mother and with the support of my entire family and friends. You guys are my foundation. But soon I will have a new home, a new family to protect, and they will have my back too. And no, I won't be going far, Pops.
So Emery Jones with Walker Howard and Will Campbell there with him, announcing his commitment to LSU on Friday, and that commitment video done really nicely by Tiger Details. You can see it on Emery Jones' Twitter account there at Tiger Details as well. Shout out to them, a really nice job. So Emery Jones jumps in the boat for LSU's class of 2022, and this is significant on a whole lot of levels, y'all. Let me just kind of check a few boxes here. Obviously, you're talking about, number one, you want to keep the best players from Louisiana in state. That's always the objective. We know it ever since Saban was here, the whole put a fence around Louisiana thing, and it's reigned true. If you get the best players in Louisiana to stay home, you're going to have a top 10 class every year. So you look at Emery Jones, a big four-star offensive lineman, one of the top players in the state of Louisiana, the 9th best offensive lineman in the country for the class of 2022, the number 13 overall player in the state of Louisiana, offers from Florida State, Arkansas, Alabama, Tennessee. So when you have offers from all these major programs, especially when you have offers from teams within your division, not just in the SEC, but in your division, of course, you want to make sure that you beat out those schools and keep that prospect in state. So you check that box. The other thing, too, and I've mentioned it a couple times, I'll continue to mention, is the pipeline at Catholic High right now. Most recently in Baton Rouge, we saw this with U-High. And U-High had an incredible run where they churned out a lot of championship teams, and they churned out a lot of prospects. And you know a lot of the names. And too many of them didn't end up in Baton Rouge. It was Tim Williams or Dylan Moses or Micaiah Tongue or Jordan Clark. And some of those for different reasons. But ultimately, you missed. It's hard to say miss, but you understand what I'm saying in that, and just in the parlance of recruiting. But there were a lot of guys that you wanted that you didn't get from not only an in-state school, but an in-town school in Baton Rouge. And you lost a lot of those guys to division rivals. So when you look at what is brewing over at Catholic, it's sort of the next wave. And you're going to have a great opportunity to get a lot of these prospects over the next handful of years just to stay in town and go from Hearthstone or Claycut to Dalrymple. And Emery Jones is a big piece of that. So when you look at Emery, 6'4", 341. He plays left tackle at Catholic, but he's going to be an interior lineman at high school at LSU. In high school, you just see that a lot, right? A lot of high schools just take your best offensive lineman, you put him at left tackle. So that's where Emery is at Catholic, but he's a guy that is going to play interior at LSU. Number 189 overall prospect in the country in the 247 composite. As we mentioned, the 9th best interior offensive lineman in the country, the 13th best player in the state of Louisiana. It's a big get in-state, in town, keep him away from division rivals. But maybe the biggest, most important part of keeping Emery Jones in town and getting him to be a part of this class is that this is another illustration of the necessity of roster management. And quite honestly, y'all, this is something that this staff, where they erred. And it caused some of what we've seen the past couple of years. Roster management, especially since Austin Thomas had been gone, had been a problem. It's where his value is most apparent in putting together not only your recruiting board, but your entire roster for the football team and knowing what positions and when to go after those positions. I'll give you an example. In 2018, LSU had kind of bungled the quarterback spot. They didn't sign a quarterback, which necessitated them going after a transfer quarterback. Now, it worked out. You ended up landing Joe Burrow, the most transformative person in the history of your program. But that's not a recipe you want to follow. You'd rather do what you have right now, which is stockpile really good players and understand that you're always going to have really good depth. I could point out the lack of roster management, which kind of led to the situation on the roster this past year. You had to look at the signing class of 2017 and know where your holes were going to come after the 2019 season. When you had a linebacker group that included Jacob Phillips and Patrick Queen and Caleb Von Chasson, it was pretty obvious to see those dudes probably aren't going to be here 4 or 5 years. Well, what happened? You ended up losing all of them after the national championship. And as a result, you were really bad at linebacker last year. You had to go seek a transfer in Jabril Cox, and that didn't work out awesome because he was trying to play a different position. Even this year, you kind of had to supplement again with Mike Jones and with Bug Strong. Now, I think they're better there now because they've picked up with 2 recruiting classes since to add on to that in addition to the transfer portal. So they're stabilizing, but that's the necessity of roster management. And you can look ahead and see what's about to happen on the offensive line at LSU. You're probably going to lose all 5 starters after the season. I think it's safe to say you're going to lose 4 of the 5. Cam Wire would be the one that's a question mark if he would return, depending on how the season goes. But the other 4 guys, you're likely losing after this season. So you may have an entire turnover on your offensive line. And what's even more sort of concerning is last week at the Rotary Club meeting, Ed Ogeron said that the 2 primary backups, like your 6th and 7th linemen, are Anthony Bradford and Garrett Dellinger. Well, Bradford hadn't played at all, and Dellinger is a true freshman. So what does that mean about the guys you've recruited behind them? I mean, look at the rest of the scholarship linemen. If it's Cardell Thomas or Xavier Hill or Marlon Martinez or Charles Turner, like, where are these guys? Like, why haven't they stepped up and are pushing to be on the field? I mean, you have got to supplement in a big way your offensive line this year. So now by adding Emery Jones, and you already had Will Campbell, number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, big left tackle out of Neville. Now you add Emery, again, a left tackle. You add Emery Jones, who's a 4-star interior offensive lineman. So you've added him to the interior. Bo Bordelon, little bit of a project, a 3-star, but was 6'5", 265 last year. Word is he's already up over 280, so he's putting size on that frame, and he could be an inside-outside guy. We'll see. And then at LSU's camp earlier this month, they offered Fitzgerald West, who came from Lafayette Christian, who came in as a defensive lineman. They said, hey, will you work out at offensive line? So he was snapping the ball. They offered him on the spot at center. So now you've got a center, another interior lineman in Emery Jones, likely a guard, Campbell, who's a tackle, and Bordelon, who we'll see if he plays inside or outside. But you've got 4 guys at 4 different positions, guys that can play inside and outside instead of recruiting just guards or just tackles to make them guards and make them more athletic. They're managing this position. Now, I still think that even after this class, they probably can add another one. You're probably still going to need to go add a transfer offensive lineman. Because if you lose your entire starting 5, you've got to have somebody that can jump in that has played before. So you're probably going to hit the transfer portal this offseason and find an offensive lineman that is ready-made. But this class is how you start the process of rebuilding that position and loading that position for years to come. So for many reasons, adding Emery Jones is a very significant piece to this class for LSU. And they're starting to get that roster back in line to where it's not just have a big pop like you did in 2019, but have something that's sustainable. And I know nobody likes this example, but it's Alabama. How are they able to lose 5 first-rounders, a starting quarterback, a Heisman Trophy winner, like every year and not miss a beat? Because they have the best roster management. They recruit great, but they manage their roster as well, knowing what spots they're deficient and where they're going to need to supplement by projecting a year or two in advance. And I'm telling you right now, when you look at the guys that are going to be sophomores this year, next year's junior class, that team is going to get gutted by the NFL draft, by early entries. There's too much talent there. With Kayshon Boutte and Jay Ward and Elias Ricks, Jaquelin Roy. All these guys that are going to be juniors next year, they did an incredible job recruiting that class of 2020. And you're going to have a lot of early defections out of that class. So you need to start now looking ahead to say who's going to leave early and where are we going to be thin. And that's kind of what they're doing, and it's good to see. It's a big, big tip of the cap, obviously, to Austin Thomas, who is managing that board, and then to Ed Ogeron and the staff for continuing to recruit these guys so hard and putting together a really, really special class in a year where there's a bumper crop in Louisiana. They keep getting these top guys in the state to stay home. Emery Jones is the latest. See if they can get Jacoby Matthews back in at some point. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.